Yes, well, you know someone else that has so much weight behind their name and has been a big friend to the program here in Boston and Under the Chat. It is Drake Maye's high school football coach, Scott Chadwick, joining us back here on the show. Let's get into it, Coach. First of all, welcome back. Thanks for joining us yet again. We saw you, chatted with you before Super Bowl, so I think you know where we're going. How did you enjoy the Super Bowl? We know that you were going to Disney after that as well.
I enjoyed Disney a lot more than I enjoyed the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
like a lot of us.
Yeah.
Tough night to watch. Tough to stomach that one. And but I've now lost 3 state championship games, and I always say I'm one of these people. I'd rather get there and lose than not get there at all.
Yeah. What was it like to watch a player that you formerly coached in the Super Bowl, though, in general, win or lose? Was that a surreal feeling?
No question. That was kind of the word I used all week leading up with all the interviews I did. It was very surreal. I have a couch in my office that guy sat on and, took naps and talked to me and hung out, and to think that 15-year-old kid who sat on my couch was the starting quarterback in a Super Bowl, surreal is probably the best word to describe it. It was a great day. I'm not one of these people that watches all the pregame shows and waste my whole Sunday doing all that. I did that day. I kind of decided I was going to enjoy the whole day, and I was going to enjoy the moment, and I was on ESPN for a little bit, so I had to tune in there too.
Now, you enjoyed the moment. When you watched the game, though, how did you watch the game, I should say? Was it from a coach's perspective when you saw what was going on and maybe some of the things that Seattle was doing that was disrupting Drake and the Patriots offense? How did you watch the game, Scott?
A little bit of both. I mean, you're trying to certainly be a fan and do that, but, when you're a coach, it kind of naturally kicks in sometimes. And, there were some things that, I watched and I thought, man, I wish they might try this or do this, or, maybe they could, with what the Seahawks are doing, maybe take advantage and do this. And, but, I try not to get too much into that because you don't know what they've practiced and what they've talked about. And it's easy to sit there and say, we should do this or do that. When you don't know what's in their game plan and what they've practiced all week.
Yeah, easy to play Monday morning quarterback. I know we certainly have here on this show. But you talked about your relationship with Drake and some of those days where he hung out on your couch in your office. How do you think this failure now at the highest level of the sport will impact him going forward?
Well, first off, you're talking about a guy that takes tremendous pride in his craft. He's a guy that is very aware of what he does on the field. He wants to be good, and I think he wants to be as good as possible. And I think something like this, it's going to motivate him. I think he'll work like crazy in the off season. He'll look at things he can do to get better. I keep telling everybody though, the thing about Drake is everybody's like, how's this going to affect him? It's not really going to change him that much because he's already a hard worker and he's already a guy that cares about what he does. What Drake just needs to do is continue to get reps. You're talking about a guy that, because of COVID, only started 2 years in high school. He only started 2 years in college. You got all these other quarterbacks that are coming out of college now, a Bo Nix and a Jalen Daniels. Those guys played 5 years of college football. Drake played 2 and, didn't start right away, even his rookie year. So, he's still a guy that's relatively inexperienced. And I think his best days are still way ahead of him.
So far ahead of him. Coach, I'm still sitting on the side of the fence where it's like I'm not passing out crutches for excuses, but the bottom line is your playmaker, your key guy isn't playing healthy. And last time we had you on, you were able to spot some of the differences that as a coach and somebody who knows Drake Maye quite well, noticed that there was tendencies and mechanics off for him in that game versus the Broncos. And I feel like it was a really emotional video to see Vrabel talking to him on the sideline and just continuing to encourage him. Drake Maye didn't not want to be a part of that game, which speaks to the compete that you've illuminated here on Boston's Under the Chat. But maybe from your perspective, how tough was that to see and know that, like, yeah, a lot of players are not 100%, but like Drake Maye wasn't 100% for one of the biggest opportunities of his career. And I can only imagine mentally how he had to continue to overcome and push himself through that moment to be there for his team.
Well, just the fact, and I haven't talked to him too much about the injury, but just the fact that he had to take a shot. I think that right there speaks to, how injured he might have been, because people aren't taking shots in their throwing shoulder just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
And, and one of the things about, I've coached guys before that have had, those kind of pain-killing shots. And it's a weird feeling to be, as a quarterback, to be trying to throw the ball and not have, feeling in your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm sure a very unusual thing. And it's not something you practice. You don't go get shots every day in practice so you can get used to the feeling of, what it feels to be numbed up. So that's a difficult thing to go out there and have to play, with a feeling that's totally, foreign to you.
Yeah, you hear the mic'd up audio with Josh McDaniels where he's saying this is hard, and you see him try to get through, but he gets through moments of adversity and moments where Mike Vrabel is saying, do you want to finish this? And he's on the ground. Were there any moments that you can remember coaching him where he got through adversity, or maybe moments where mentally he thought this is difficult?
Listen, in 2 years, the guy threw 88 touchdowns and only had 7 interceptions for me. So there were not a whole lot of those moments. There was one game his sophomore year, the one game in the regular season that we lost. I said he threw 7 interceptions in 2 years. Well, in that game, he threw 3 in one half. And it was the only game in the regular season we lost that year. Well, we came back and played that team again Thanksgiving weekend in the playoffs, and he went 19 for 23 for 190 yards and 3 touchdowns that night. So, after playing probably the not best game he had played all year against those guys, he came back in the playoffs and we won by, I think it was 30-something to 7. So he was going to make sure that our seniors kept playing. So that was how he handled probably the one bad game he had in high school.
88 touchdowns. Wow, that's incredible. Certainly not much adversity there. Now, I'd imagine that your high school coaching career still has so many great years ahead. So you being an NFL GM may still have to be on the back burner for the time being. But I'm going to ask you to put your hat on for a moment there, because you had Drake. You had him when he was great, the 88 touchdowns you mentioned. What do you think the Patriots can do to add to his ability to have more tools out there, so to speak, so that he can thrive in year 3?
I think, again, just from what they did from his first year to his second year, the way they upgraded the supporting cast, I think that's just something that just needs to continue to happen. I'd love to see, him have one of those, top 10, receivers in the league kind of guy that, when it's real crunch time, a guy, you can go to. And, and I think that was part of the whole debate when you talked about him and Matthew Stafford for the MVP. Well, Matthew Stafford has, Puka Nacua, who might be the best in the league, and Devontae Adams, who's been a top 10 receiver in the league. Yeah. So I'd like to be great, if Drake could have, a couple more weapons like that to work with. And then, again, just continue to improve the offensive line, which I think they made great strides from his first year to his second year there, but just continue. And part of that improving of the offensive line may just be, the 2 rookies just get better. And that probably is one way that, they improve.
All right, Coach, I got to give a hot seat moment. We always do this just a little bit, but you have a wish list and you have a blank check. Who would you love to see Drake Maye connect with next year, either in the wide receiving room or, I like the idea of maybe a more complete tight end getting into the mix, but I've always been biased when it comes to tight ends.
Well, without having the free agent list in front of me of who's a free agent.
Well, I told you we were going to make you an NFL GM.
All right, and hot seat. Sorry. This is what happens when you're friends with us now. This is just casual.
You know, I like. I'm a tight end guy too. I think the tight ends are good. And I think there's a couple out there that probably wouldn't be, terribly expensive. I really like Isaiah Likely, who's with the Baltimore Ravens. My son actually coached him at Coastal Carolina, so I might have a little bit of bias there.
Okay.
But I like him. I don't know if Pitts from Atlanta becomes available, but I think there's a really nice target there.
What about a Dallas Goedert? That was my pitch the other day, but I kind of got booed out of here a little bit.
Yeah.
Coach, you're not on my side? Wow. I thought you were really coming hot. Help me out here. No.
I wouldn't turn him down. I wouldn't turn him down.
But
I think
not your first pick, though.
Still not very convincing.
I think you can get Likely maybe a little cheaper. And I think
better years ahead, too. He's only 25 years old, right?
Yeah,
his best years are ahead of him still.
All right. Guys, I was looking for some help in the red zone, I wanted that to go from 20th ranked in the NFL to, like, top 10. That was my hope.
Well, the other thing a good tight end can help you do is you can use, more than one tight end down in the red zone there, and you can run the ball. There's there's always the thought of that, too.
Look at that. That's good coaching right there. See, now I know why you're a state champion.
Exactly. Now, Coach, I don't know if you knew Ann Michael Maye at all or Ann Michael at the time before she married Drake. Her Bakemas phenomenon that has come up in their partnership in their marriage and how they're both supporting each other and their growing careers, essentially. Is there anything you remember about her, if you were around her at all, or their time together then?
Well, Drake was with us at Myers Park, and Ann Michael was at Huff, where Drake was as a freshman, and obviously she stayed there. And it was very well known around the Myers Park campus that Drake had a very serious girlfriend, that he'd had in middle school, that he'd had, still had in high school. And Ann Michael was there on Friday nights at all the games. And it was, certainly a source of stress for the girls at Myers Park to know that there really wasn't going to be much opportunity with Drake.
Oh, man, that's tough for those ladies for sure. Yeah. But he found his good thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that was it's. Just,
I keep telling Drake, I've put in a request for some oatmeal chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah, did you watch any of Bakemas on her TikTok?
I've told Drake that the next time we're baking stuff, I'd like to put my order in for my oatmeal chocolate chips.
Something moved around.
Yeah, no, I think there were a lot of favorites that I saw here with what she was making. Cinnamon rolls, I think, too.
We had a whole special on
those actually looked really good.
Yeah. Coach, before we let you go, another question that I'd love to pick your brain on, especially from your perspective, is with the extension of the season, just kind of how do you talk to players about not only being mindful of their body, but still being able to be effective with more of a tax on them, because there's still conversation on how they're going to play with the preseason, if they're going to add another season game, and just like how football is becoming a year-round sport even more than it's started to evolve over the past 5 years.
And I think, again, when you play in the Super Bowl, that becomes even more of an effect, because you look at the teams that maybe didn't make the playoffs. They've had a whole month to recover that, the teams that didn't play in the Super Bowl did. And so, I think that is one of the challenges when your season goes as long as the Patriots did, is finding that balance of the rest, I think, that you need, with also knowing you can't wait too long to start, your off-season program, because you don't want to fall behind everybody else. And, I'll be in my case, we had teams that I played, here in North Carolina whose seasons finished right at Halloween, and we finished December 12th. So, our off season is like 6 weeks behind some people. So, there is I called it to somebody the other day. I said, it's the cost of winning. There is a cost of winning, and that is that your off season is shorter than everybody else. But most of all, your recovery time is definitely shorter than everybody else.
Absolutely. The cost of winning, that'll stick with all of us, but definitely something we'll be able to gauge moving forward. Scott Chadwick, everyone, Drake Maye's high school football coach. Thank you yet again for taking the time to join us and come and hang out with us here on Boston is in the Chat. And hopefully we'll have you back soon, maybe with a free agent list. I don't know. Just giving you a heads up.
I think maybe I need to come up to Boston and go in studio one
Oh,
time.
let's
We would
do it.
love that.
You are welcome
We would love
anytime,
that.
Scott.
It's a
That would
blast
be
talking to you via this, but it would be so much more fun
Yeah.
to have you in studio. So definitely keep us posted. But we can't wait to chat with you again very soon.
And we'll send the private jet, so get ready.
Exactly.
Do that.